The first time I heard the words, they didn't even register. They were just a low murmur from the kitchen, a sound muffled by the baby monitor's static and the blood pounding in my ears. I was sitting in the dark of the nursery, rocking my 4-week-old son, Leo. My body ached with a fatigue so deep, it felt like it had settled in my bones. She's just not fit to be a mother, Joshua. Someone has to step in. The voice was my mother-in-law's. The person she was talking to was my husband. And the unfit mother, I realized with a sudden chilling clarity, was me. My name is Clara. I'm 32 years old, and this was not how my life was supposed to go. I'm an event planner. I make lists. I create timelines. I anticipate problems and solve them before they happen. When Josh and I decided to have a baby, I had a color-coded binder for everything from birth plans to pediatricians. I was prepared, or so I thought. When his mother, Virginia, had offered to come stay for a month after Leo was born, I cried with relief. Josh, who is 34 and sees his 61-year-old mother as a literal saint, beamed. "See? I told you she'd be a lifesaver." The first week was fine. She cooked, she tidied, she held the baby while I took the first real shower I'd had in days. I was grateful. But then the help started to change. It became a constant low-grade hum of criticism, disguised as loving concern. It started with breastfeeding. I'd be nursing Leo, and Virginia would hover, her brow furrowed. "Are you sure he's getting enough, dear? He seems to be fussing. A little formula would settle him right down." When I told her the lactation consultant said his latch and my supply were perfect, she just smiled tightly. "Well, they have to say that, don't they? It's their job." Then it was my sleep, or lack thereof. "You should nap when the baby naps," she'd say, only to wake me an hour later. "Clara, I couldn't find the stain remover, and Leo's onesie is a disaster." The one time I did manage to sleep for a solid 2 hours, I woke up to find all the kitchen cabinets open, with Virginia reorganizing my spice rack. "It was just chaos in here," she announced cheerfully. "You'll thank me later." I tried to talk to Josh. I waited until late one evening when Virginia had finally gone to bed. He was scrolling on his phone, unwinding from a 12-hour day at his firm. "Josh," I started, my voice trembling a little. "Your mom, she's a lot." He didn't look up. "She's helping, Clara. I don't know what we'd do without her." "She's not helping. She's undermining. She questions every single thing I do with Leo. She told me I was spoiling him by holding him too much." He finally lowered his phone, his expression weary. "Babe, she raised 2 kids. She probably knows a thing or two. You're just emotional right now." "It's the hormones." The word hung in the air between us. Hormones. The ultimate dismissal? It was the tidy box he could put all my feelings in, tape it shut, and shove it in a closet. My frustration, my exhaustion, my creeping anxiety. It wasn't real. It was just a chemical imbalance that would eventually correct itself. "It's not my hormones, Josh. It's my mother-in-law, in my house, telling me I'm a bad mom." "She would never say that," he said, his voice hardening. "You're tired. You're misinterpreting things. Just try to be grateful. She's doing this for us." I gave up. Arguing took energy I didn't have. The conversation left me feeling utterly alone, adrift in my own home. My world had shrunk to these 4 walls, and it was starting to feel like a prison where I was the only inmate who knew the warden was cruel. Which brought me back to the nursery chair, the baby monitor crackling on the nightstand. Leo was finally asleep in my arms, his tiny chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. I heard Josh sigh in the kitchen. "Mom, that's not fair. She's just tired." "It's more than tired, Joshua." Virginia's voice was firm, righteous. "The baby cries, and she just cries right along with him. The house is a mess unless I clean it." She can't even remember if she's fed him half the time. She's unfit to be a mother. If I wasn't here, I shudder to think what would happen to that poor child. A cold wave washed over me, so intense it felt like ice water in my veins. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a generational difference. This was a deliberate, calculated campaign. She wasn't here to help me. She was here to replace me. After that night, something inside me shifted. The hope that this was all a big misunderstanding curdled into a cold, hard knot of dread in my stomach. Virginia's words replayed in my head on a loop. Unfit to be a mother. I started seeing every interaction through that lens. Her presence became a constant, suffocating evaluation. The next 2 weeks were a blur of anxious activity. I became a machine of preemptive perfection. I didn't just clean the kitchen. I scrubbed it until the stainless steel gleamed, leaving no stray crumb for her to find. I didn't just change Leo's diapers. I had the changing station organized like a surgical tray, with wipes fanned out and creams in a neat row. I tracked every feeding, every nap, every wet diaper in an app on my phone with a militant precision. I was trying to build an ironclad case for my own competence, hoping that if I did everything perfectly, she would have nothing left to criticize. It was exhausting. I was running on fumes, my body still aching from childbirth, my mind a frantic mess of checklists and timetables. The joy of having a newborn was being systematically erased and replaced with fear. I stopped humming to Leo while I rocked him, terrified she'd tell me I was off-key and upsetting him. Josh, meanwhile, began to evaporate. He'd text around 6, saying he was swamped and would be home late. Then he'd text again at 8, saying his team was going for a quick drink to decompress. He started coming home after I'd already put Leo down for the night and retreated to our bedroom. He'd slip into bed, kiss my forehead in the dark, and be gone before the sun came up. He was avoiding the war zone, leaving me to fend for myself. His absence was a quiet, constant confirmation of my isolation. He had chosen his side. One afternoon, while Virginia was out running an errand that I knew was just an excuse to get her hair done, I called my sister, Sophia. The moment I heard her voice, the dam broke. "She's trying to erase me," I sobbed into the phone, pacing the living room. "She reorganizes the pantry. She refolds the laundry I just folded. She tells me I'm holding the baby wrong. Josh just says I'm hormonal and that she's a saint for helping." "She's not a saint, Clara. She's a saboteur," Sophia said, her voice fierce and protective. My sister is 4 years older than me, a pragmatic lawyer, and has never been a fan of Virginia's brand of sugary condescension. This is a power play. She's trying to position herself as the primary caregiver. What do? I feel like I'm going crazy. Maybe I'm overreacting. "You are not overreacting," she said firmly. "Listen to me. You need to start writing things down. Every comment, every time she undermines you, every time Josh dismisses you. Write down the date, the time, and exactly what was said or done. Create a log." I recoiled from the idea. "A log? Soph, that feels so calculated, so hostile. I still live with her. I just want things to get better." "Things won't get better until you have proof that they're this bad," she insisted. "Right now, it's your word against hers, and Josh has already shown you whose word he trusts. Just do it. Please." I told her I'd think about it, but I knew I wouldn't. It felt too final, like a declaration of war. I still clung to a sliver of hope that Josh would wake up and see what was happening. That hope died later the same day. I had just put Leo down in his bassinet for a nap. The house was quiet. I walked back toward the nursery to grab the baby monitor and stopped dead in the doorway. Virginia was leaning over the bassinet. In her hand was a Q-tip, and she was gently pushing it into my 6-week-old son's tiny ear canal. My blood ran cold. Every pediatrician, every book, every parenting website on the planet screamed not to do that. You could perforate their eardrum. Virginia, I said, my voice dangerously calm, what are you doing? She looked up, not with guilt, but with a serene, beatific smile. She held up the Q-tip as if presenting a trophy. His ears were just a little waxy, dear. Can't have him getting an infection. She looked back down at Leo, who was stirring uncomfortably, and cooed, Don't you worry, little one. Grandma will make sure you're all clean. Mommy will learn. That night, after I put Leo back to sleep, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I walked into the home office, opened my laptop, and created a new document. The blinking cursor on the blank page felt like a steady heartbeat in a silent room. My hands were perfectly still as I typed. Date, October 12th. Time, 3:45 p.m. Incident, V, inserted a cotton swab into the ear of my 6-week-old son against all medical advice. When confronted, she stated, Mommy will learn. Something inside me clicked into place. The frantic, buzzing anxiety that had been my constant companion for weeks suddenly went quiet. It was replaced by a cold, clear focus. Sophia was right. Hope was a liability. Documentation was a weapon. I called my best friend Tiffany the next day. I need a sanity check, I said, meeting her at a coffee shop a few blocks from my house, the first time I'd been out alone in over a month. Tiffany, a sharp-witted marketing director who could smell BS from a mile away, took one look at my face and ordered me a croissant with my latte. Okay, Hudson, spill. You look like you're about to either commit a felony or file for divorce. I told her everything. The constant criticism, Josh's dismissal, the Q-tip. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing harder with every word. When I finished, she took a long sip of her coffee. This isn't a mother-in-law problem, Clara. This is an infestation. Sophia's log is a good start, but you need to think bigger. This needs to be a ledger, a case file. You're an event planner. Treat this like the world's worst project. Document everything. Time spent on rework because she helped by reorganizing. Money spent on things to fix her mistakes. Every condescending comment. Every boundary stomp. My brother-in-law, Dan, offered to help, I said, the idea taking root. He's great with tech. He could probably help me set up something secure. Perfect, Tiffany said, a glint in her eye. Project, Evict the Dictator, is officially a go. The very next week, I hired a sleep consultant. Leo was almost 8 weeks old, and none of us were sleeping for more than a 90-minute stretch. I was hallucinating from exhaustion. I found a highly recommended professional named Reagan Little, a kind but no-nonsense woman of about 29, who came to the house for a consultation. She gave me a gentle, manageable plan to help Leo learn to connect his sleep cycles. It involved consistent routines and waiting just a few minutes before rushing in if he fussed. Virginia sat in on the consultation, her arms crossed, a skeptical smirk on her face. The moment Reagan left, the verdict came down. A sleep consultant? She scoffed, picking a piece of lint off the sofa. What a racket! Paying some girl who's never had children to tell you how to be a mother. She's a snake oil salesgirl, Clara. A baby needs his mother's comfort, not some arbitrary schedule. I ignored her. That evening, I put Leo down in his bassinet, drowsy but awake, just as Reagan had instructed. He started to fuss. I set a 2-minute timer on my phone, my heart pounding. Before the first minute was up, Virginia swept past me. I can't bear it, she declared, marching into the nursery and scooping Leo up. She rocked him against her shoulder, glaring at me over his head. See? All he needed was a little love, not neglect. She did it every single time. She'd wait for him to make the smallest peep and rush in, undoing all the work, all the consistency. After 3 days of this, I was more tired than when I started. That night, when Josh got home, I confronted him. I was calm. I was armed with facts. Josh, we need to talk about your mom and Leo's sleep. I paid for professional advice, and she is actively sabotaging it. He sighed, loosening his tie. Clara, she's just trying to help. She can't stand to hear him cry. It's her grandmotherly instinct. It's not instinct, it's control, I said, my voice level. Reagan said consistency is the only thing that works. Your mother's help is making it worse for him. For all of us. I need you to talk to her. I need you to back me up. He looked at me, his face a mask of weary frustration. He ran a hand through his hair. Back you up? Or alienate my mother who gave up a month of her life to come here and help us? He took a step closer, his voice dropping. You know, I've been thinking. You seem so on edge all the time. You're anxious, you're crying, and now you're picking fights with my mom. Maybe it's time you got some professional help. Josh's suggestion that I get professional help echoed in the silent house for days. It was the final nail in the coffin of the woman who had hoped for a partnership. That woman was gone now. In her place was someone quieter, colder, and far more observant. I stopped trying to prove myself. I stopped trying to please Virginia. I just watched, and I wrote everything down. My digital log, which Dan had helped me set up in a password-protected cloud folder, grew with chilling speed. Every passive-aggressive sigh, every backhanded compliment, every time she took Leo from my arms with the unspoken message that I was doing it wrong, it all went in. The document was becoming a meticulous autopsy of my life. About a week after the sleep training disaster, the gaslighting escalated. I came into the kitchen one morning to make coffee and found a small leather-bound journal lying on the island. It was Virginia's diary, and it was open. My eyes were drawn to the elegant looping script. I worry so much for Clara, it read. Her moods are so volatile. 1 minute she's fine, the next she's weeping. I see the strain on my poor Joshua's face. He is trying so hard to hold this family together, but I fear she is simply not coping. I must be strong for him and for my grandson. I stared at the page, my blood turning to ice. It was placed too perfectly, angled just so, as if waiting to be read. It was a trap. If I confronted her, I was the snooping, paranoid daughter-in-law. If I said nothing, the words would fester inside me, another piece of evidence for my supposed instability. I took a photo with my phone, uploaded it to my log with a timestamp, and closed the book, leaving it exactly where I found it. A few nights later, Josh came home with a rare burst of energy. Hey, I have a great idea, he announced, kissing me on the cheek as he breezed past. Mom's been here for almost 6 weeks. We should throw a big dinner party for her next Saturday to thank her for everything. I stood frozen in the hallway. A dinner party? Yeah. We'll invite my aunt and uncle, my cousin Tobias. Make it a real family affair. A proper thank you for all her help. I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat, but I swallowed it down. And who, exactly, is going to be hosting and cooking for this proper thank you? He looked at me as if the answer was obvious. You, of course. It'll mean so much more coming from you. It'll show her how much you appreciate her. That was it? That was the moment the last bit of warmth in me finally extinguished. He wanted me to cook a feast in honor of my own tormentor. He wanted me to smile and play hostess while celebrating the woman who was systematically dismantling my sanity. Later that night, I called Sophia. He wants me to throw her a thank you dinner, I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, that son of a bitch. I'm supposed to cook a 5-course meal to thank her for calling me an unfit mother and trying to drive me insane. So do it, Sophia said, her tone shifting from angry to strategic. What? Don't fight him on it. Don't give him another reason to call you ungrateful or unstable. Play along, be the perfect, gracious hostess, cook the best damn meal of your life, and then, Clara, you get your moment. You use their stage to put on your own show. A plan began to form, sharp and brilliant in my mind. The next day, I called Dan. For the rest of the week, during Leo's naps and late into the night, we worked. I sent him the contents of my log, the photos, the scanned receipts for the sleep consultant, the itemized list of comments and incidents. Dan, a graphic designer by trade, began laying it all out, not in a spreadsheet, but in the style of a high-end photo album. He designed elegant pages, pairing my cold, hard facts with stock photos of serene landscapes, a picture of a crashing wave next to the, quote, "She's unfit to be a mother," a photo of a cracked desert floor next to the log of the sleep training sabotage. He embedded QR codes that linked to audio files of me recounting specific events, my voice steady and clear. It was a masterpiece of psychological warfare, gift wrapped in sentimentality. The night before the party, I was up late, triple-checking the menu and the seating chart. The house was finally quiet. I walked past the nursery on my way to bed and noticed the door was ajar. I pushed it open and flicked on the dim night light, and I stopped cold. The room had been rearranged. The crib was pushed against a different wall. The rocking chair was in a new corner. Virginia was standing by the window, folding one of Leo's blankets. She turned, a placid smile on her face. "Oh, hello, dear. I was just fixing the energy flow in here. I read an article that said you have to be careful about drafts and direct moonlight. I just want to make sure Leo is safe." She was implying, in her sweet, poisonous way, that I had put my own child in danger. I looked at the new layout, at her smug, self-satisfied face, and felt nothing but the calm, steady hum of resolve. The dinner couldn't come soon enough. The day of the dinner party, I moved through my house with the serene focus of a surgeon. Virginia, sensing a shift in the power dynamic but misinterpreting its source, strutted around like a queen on her coronation day. She assumed my compliance was a surrender. She thought she had won. "Oh, Clara, that roast looks a bit dry," she'd comment, peering over my shoulder. "Are you sure you have the oven at the right temperature?" "It's perfect, Virginia." "Thank you," I'd reply, my voice as smooth as glass. I channeled a domestic goddess I didn't know I had in me. I made beef Wellington from scratch, creamy dauphinoise potatoes, asparagus with hollandaise, and a decadent chocolate lava cake for dessert. The house filled with the rich, comforting aromas of a happy family celebration. It was a perfect illusion. Sophia and Dan arrived first. My sister hugged me tightly in the foyer, whispering in my ear, "You good?" I nodded, pulling back with a small, determined smile. Dan gave me a discreet thumbs up from behind her. He dropped off the beautifully wrapped gift the day before, and it was now sitting on the sideboard in the dining room, a ticking time bomb in gold foil paper. Josh's aunt and uncle arrived next, followed by his cousin, Tobias. Tobias, who was about 40, had always been the black sheep of the Hudson family. He was a freelance journalist with a cynical wit and a low tolerance for pretense. He'd always been kind to me, in a detached, observant way. He greeted Virginia with a kiss on the cheek that didn't quite look genuine. "Aunt Virginia, holding down the fort, I hear." "Someone has to," she said, patting his arm. "Poor Clara was just drowning." I caught Tobias's eye from across the room. He gave me a subtle, questioning look, one I chose to ignore for the moment. Dinner was a masterclass in performance art. I played the part of the grateful, slightly overwhelmed new mother to perfection. I smiled. I laughed at Josh's uncle's bad jokes. I refilled wine glasses. Virginia, seated at the head of the table opposite Josh, held court. She recounted story after story of my supposed incompetence, framed as charming anecdotes of new mommy mishaps. And then I found her trying to put the diaper on backwards, she chirped, and the table erupted in polite laughter. I said, "Oh, you poor, sweet, tired thing. Let me show you." I just smiled and took a sip of my wine, letting her dig her own grave. With every story, she wasn't just insulting me. She was building the foundation for my rebuttal. She was establishing the narrative that I was a helpless child who needed saving, a narrative that would make the contents of that gift on the sideboard all the more shocking. Josh was glowing. He was so proud. Proud of his perfect mother, his perfect wife, his perfect family dinner. He saw the smiles and the laughter and took them at face value. He didn't see the tension in my shoulders or the way Sophia's hand kept resting on my arm, a silent anchor. He didn't notice the skeptical arch of Tobias's eyebrow as Virginia launched into another tale of my postpartum folly. After the dessert plates were cleared, Josh stood up, tapping his glass with a fork. The room fell silent. Leo was sound asleep in his nursery, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding in his honor. "I just want to take a moment," Josh began, beaming at his mother, "to thank my mom for everything she's done for us these past couple of months. She dropped everything to come here and be our rock. We honestly couldn't have done it without her." He turned his smile on me. It was warm and loving and completely oblivious. I know I speak for Clara when I say how much we appreciate it. She's been a second mother to Leo and a teacher and a lifesaver to my wife. He raised his glass. "Clara loves you so much, Mom. We all do." "To Virginia." "To Virginia," the room echoed. I raised my glass, my expression serene. I met Virginia's triumphant gaze across the table. She gave me a condescending little wink, a final assertion of her victory. I smiled back. The curtain was about to rise on my show. As the applause for Josh's speech died down, I stood up, my movements slow and deliberate. I smoothed down my dress and gave the table a warm, gracious smile. "Thank you, Josh. That was beautiful," I said, my voice steady. "And Mom," I turned my gaze to Virginia, letting the affectionate term hang in the air. "He's right. We couldn't have done it without you. Your presence here has been truly educational. And I wanted to give you something to show you just how much your time here has meant to me." I walked over to the sideboard and picked up the heavy, beautifully wrapped gift. It was a 12 by 12-inch square, wrapped in shimmering gold paper with an elegant cream-colored bow. It looked like a sentimental scrapbook, a collection of precious first memories. Sophia discreetly pulled out her phone, angling it to look like she was checking a message. Across the table, I saw Dan do the same. I placed the gift in front of Virginia. Her face lit up with a look of smug satisfaction. This was her due, her trophy for a job well done. "Oh, Clara, you shouldn't have," she cooed, though her hands were already tearing at the paper. The room watched, a gentle murmur of anticipation rippling through the guests. Josh stood beside me, his arm around my waist, squeezing gently. He was so proud of his happy, grateful wife. Virginia lifted the lid off the box. Inside was a thick, leather-bound album with the single word "gratitude" embossed in gold on the cover. She let out a little gasp of delight. "How lovely," she said, her voice thick with emotion. She opened it to the first page. The smile froze on her face. The first page was simple. Against a serene backdrop of a misty forest, bold text read, "An unfit mother's log of received help." Below it, in smaller font, a comprehensive record of services rendered by Virginia Hudson, October 31st, November 18th. She stared at it, her brow furrowing in confusion. She flipped the page. The next spread was titled, "Critiques and Undermining Commentary." It was a bulleted list, each entry dated and time-stamped. October 5, 11:15 a.m. Are you sure he's getting enough? A little formula would settle him. Ultra 12, 3:45 p.m. Mommy will learn. Ultra 21, 8:30 ATM. A baby needs his mother's comfort, not some arbitrary schedule. Her face began to pale as she flipped again, her movements becoming jerky. The next section was actions, resulting in maternal distress and financial cost. On one side was a scanned receipt for Reagan Little's sleep consultation, the total circled in red. Price, $350. Next to it was a log detailing the 3 consecutive nights Virginia had sabotaged the training. On the other side of the page was a photo of her open diary on the kitchen island. She kept turning the pages, each one a meticulously documented account of her psychological campaign. There was a page for the nursery rearrangement, complete with photos of the original layout and her safer version. There was a page detailing the cost of the extra groceries I had to buy after she'd reorganized my pantry so illogically I couldn't find anything. I'd even included an estimated cost for my own therapy sessions, which I had already booked. Initial consultation for gaslighting-induced anxiety, $220,000. The final pages were the crescendo. The second to last page was a summary. It was a clean, corporate-looking infographic Dan had designed. It showed a pie chart breaking down the categories of her help: 40% unsolicited advice, 30% boundary violations, 20% direct undermining, 10% feigned concern. Then, the last page. It was stark white, with only a few lines of text in the center, formatted like a formal invoice. Invoice. Recipient: Virginia Hudson. Services rendered. Postpartum support. Total time served: 164 hours of documented emotional labor, psychological distress, and remedial action. Amount due: paid in full. Note: thank you for your service. Virginia's hands were trembling. The color had completely drained from her face, leaving behind a mottled, papery white. The silence in the room was absolute, thick and heavy like a blanket. Everyone was staring, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. Josh, who had been looking over her shoulder, finally processed what he was seeing. His arm dropped from my waist. He took a step back, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. He looked from the book to me, his voice a low, dangerous mutter. "What the hell is this?" Virginia slammed the album shut. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. Her head snapped up, her eyes blazing with a furious cornered animal energy. "Lies!" she shrieked, her voice shrill and ugly. "This is all vicious, twisted lies. How could you do this, Clara? After everything I've done for you." She looked around the table, her expression pleading. "She's unwell. I told you, Joshua. She's been unstable since the baby was born. This is what postpartum depression looks like." I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I met her frantic gaze with a calm that felt like it was forged in ice. Every entry in that book is dated, timed, and documented, Virginia. Many have photographic evidence. Are the pictures lying too? Josh's aunt and uncle were staring at their plates, their faces flushed with discomfort. They wouldn't meet my eyes. They were loyalists, caught in the crossfire but unwilling to abandon their queen. But then, a new voice cut in, dry and laced with contempt. "Oh, I don't know," Tobias said, leaning back in his chair and swirling the wine in his glass. "It sounds pretty accurate to me." All eyes swiveled to him. "I always knew you were like this, Aunt Virginia," he continued, his gaze fixed on her. "The sweet, helpful martyr who leaves a trail of emotional wreckage in her wake. You did it to my mother for years. This is just the first time someone's had the guts to take notes." Virginia's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She looked as if Tobias had slapped her. "That's enough, Tobias," Josh's uncle finally mumbled, his voice thick. Is it? Tobias shot back, his eyes flashing. Or is it just the first time you've been forced to look at it? Clara isn't the problem here. She's just the one who finally learned to document the symptoms. The room fractured. Josh's aunt started muttering about disrespect and family loyalty. Dan stood up, a silent, solid presence beside Sophia. Tiffany, who I hadn't even realized had arrived for the dessert and drama portion of the evening as we'd planned, was standing by the doorway, phone still in hand, a small, viciously satisfied smile on her face. Josh finally found his voice. It was shaking with a mixture of humiliation and rage. Get out, he said, his voice low and directed at Tobias. All of you, just get out of my house. The guest scrambled to leave, a clumsy, awkward exodus of averted eyes and whispered apologies. Sophia squeezed my arm one last time before she and Dan left, her eyes saying everything she couldn't. Soon, it was just the three of us left in the wreckage of the perfect family dinner. The beautifully cooked meal sat half-eaten on the table, a testament to the lie it had been. Virginia was openly sobbing now, great, gulping, theatrical sobs. Josh rounded on me, his face pale, his fists clenched. Are you happy now? You wanted to humiliate my mother? You wanted to destroy my family? Congratulations, Clara. Mission accomplished. Your mother has been emotionally abusing me for 6 weeks, Josh, I said, my voice finally rising, filled with all the frustration I had swallowed. She has been systematically trying to convince you and me that I am an unfit mother. The only thing I destroyed tonight was her narrative. She was helping, he yelled. She was trying to help, and you threw it back in her face with this psychotic scrapbook. Did you even read it? I asked, my voice dropping back to that icy calm. Did you look at the evidence, or did you just see what you wanted to see? Your sainted mother, attacked by your crazy hormonal wife? He stared at me, his jaw working, but he had no answer. He couldn't admit that he hadn't looked, that he'd refused to see. For the first time in months, I felt my spine straighten. The fog of exhaustion and self-doubt had lifted, burned away by the fire of confrontation. I wasn't a patient to be managed or a child to be placated. My voice had power again. From the other room, the baby monitor clicked on, carrying the sound of Leo stirring peacefully in his sleep. Finally. Josh looked from me to his weeping mother and back again. The choice was laid bare before him, and he couldn't make it. The humiliation was too great. He just shook his head, a look of utter defeat on his face. I need space, he muttered, turning and walking out of the dining room. He said it like he needed to think, but it sounded like a retreat. It sounded like the white flag of a man who had just realized he'd been fighting on the wrong side of the war all along. A week passed in a state of suspended animation. Virginia was the first to break the silence. She didn't confront me or try to apologize. She simply packed her bags while I was out for a walk with Leo. When I returned, her guest room was empty, the bed stripped, the air strangely light. There was no goodbye note. She just vanished, leaving the album on the nightstand like an abandoned weapon. The quiet in the house was profound. It was no longer the tense, watchful silence of a ceasefire, but the deep, restorative quiet of a sanctuary. I could hear Leo's soft breaths from his nursery, the hum of the refrigerator, the rustle of leaves outside the window. The house was mine again. The first thing I did was call Reagan Little, the sleep consultant. I'm ready to start over, I told her, and there was no judgment in her voice, only encouragement. That night, I started the routine again. When Leo fussed, I waited, my heart aching, but my resolve firm. And after a few minutes, he settled. He connected one sleep cycle to the next. For the first time in 2 months, my son slept for a solid 4-hour stretch. I stood over his crib, watching his tiny chest rise and fall, and felt a wave of pure, unadulterated love wash over me, untainted by fear or anxiety. We were finally bonding, just the two of us. Josh slept in the guest room Virginia had vacated. He moved his things in the day after the dinner party without a word. He was adrift, reeling from the public implosion of his family and the destruction of the pedestal he'd built for his mother. We moved around each other like ghosts, our conversations limited to the logistics of a shared life. Who was buying groceries? Whether the recycling needed to go out. He was trying to process the chasm between the mother he idolized and the woman detailed in the pages of that album, which now sat on his dresser. I didn't push him. I didn't demand an apology. Honestly, I didn't know if I wanted one. The damage felt too deep, the betrayal too fundamental. Could I ever trust him to see me again? To believe me over her? I didn't have the answer, and for now, I didn't need one. My focus was singular, my son and my sanity. I felt centered. I wasn't the frantic, weeping woman Virginia had tried to paint me as. I wasn't a maid in my own home. I wasn't unstable. I was a mother. I woke up each morning, fed my son, took him for walks, and felt the simple, profound joy of it. The world came back into focus. About 2 weeks after the dinner, I took the album and a black marker to the kitchen table. I carefully redacted the most personal details, the QR codes, the therapy receipts, the raw emotional quotes. Then I packaged it in a sturdy mailer. I drove to the post office with Leo sleeping soundly in his car seat and sent the package to Virginia's address with a simple invoice tucked inside. This one had only a single line item. For services rendered, emotional clarity, no charge. When I got home, Josh was standing in the kitchen, holding a cup of coffee. He looked tired, but the anger in his eyes had been replaced by something else, something that looked a lot like shame. I read the whole thing, he said quietly, gesturing toward the guest room where the original album still sat. Every word. I should have listened to you. I am so sorry, Clara. I nodded, accepting the words but not absolving the actions. I know. We stood in the quiet for a long moment. The future of our marriage was a huge, unanswered question hanging between us, and I was in no hurry to answer it. Peace was too new, too precious to disturb. I walked over to the counter and picked up a package of baby food I'd bought that morning, a little pouch of pureed pears. Leo was still weeks away from starting solids, but I'd seen it and bought it on impulse. It felt like an act of faith in the future. I held it up. She taught me something after all, I said, my voice even. Josh looked at me, confused. What's that? I looked at the little pouch in my hand, at the promise of the next stage, the next milestone I would guide my son through on my own terms. How important it is to say thank you,